what does it look like to go from footage to film? That is the question. You have just a bunch of shots on your timeline dumped from the SD card of your camera. Now let's turn that into a short film. What does that process look like? So, in order to kind of go in depth and talk about that process, let's analyze one of the scenes from my newest short. This is actually going to be two scenes. And I'm going to show you a rough cut version of those scenes because I don't want to show off the process of polish that comes with coming back to the scene over and over and over again, that iterative process. I want to show you that initial process of just organizing your footage, sifting through takes, and assembling the scene from there. Because that is still the backbone of all the work that you do from then, even when the scene gets better after iteration and continuing to cut things. I don't want to show you the finished cut. I want to show you this rough assembly so that you understand the benefit of that initial process. If you want to see like the final version of the film, I'm sure I'll put a link in the description. And so I recommend watching the final version. But I'm going to go ahead and show you the rough cut of these first two scenes so that I can talk about the work that went into that rough cut. So let's go ahead and watch that, and then we will talk more about it after then. I'll see you then.
Action.
I don't understand. Why don't you want me to do any new music on Sunday?
Well, most of the congregation's my father's age, Trinity. And when he preaches, he speaks their language. I think the music should be spoken in their language, too.
But traditions breed complacency, Jethro. The Spirit of God is alive and well, and sometimes he demands we leave behind our routines.
These old hymns aren't routines to be broken. They're authentic modes of worship. Now, for these old people to try and sing along to your newest songs, I just don't think they could sing it with the same honesty that they'd have otherwise. Look, we'll settle this debate tomorrow, all right? I'll send you a song list by then.
Hey, I just wanted to let you know that the church board is still comfortable with you speaking. Is that something you're still interested in?
Oh, I'd be happy to. I think I have a lot more to say now.
Where do the words come from?
I believe they come from God, but Trinity, do you believe that God might allow the spirits of the departed to sometimes return to this earth?
No, I think he may allow his messages to be delivered by angels and dreams in forms that we recognize, forms that we're comfortable with, but never would he allow his children to be separated from him once they're in heaven.
I think you're right. But what if I have actually seen a ghost?
Demons can take the form of loved ones too, Jethro.
Let's talk about what went into this. Like I said, like that is a rough cut, but there's a lot of work already that went into that rough cut that is going to be the basis for the final version of the film. I'm not going to recut things from scratch. I've created, a rough assembly, and I will be editing that rough assembly. I'm not going to completely restructure things. So I think it's valuable to show off this process for creating that rough assembly. So I guess I can't value enough the process of just organizing your footage on the timeline. And that's something that looks a little bit different for everybody and looks different depending on the scene even. But for a scene like this that is a dialogue scene, that is a conversation, I'm going to edit conversations differently than I do other types of scenes. Or other types of films. A film like Benched that I released recently, I had a strict storyboard that I adhered to. I kept the script in mind as I was editing, and there were new decisions that arose from that. But I had like a sequence of events, and I stuck to it. I had angles that I had shot in a specific order. But for a conversation here, I wasn't necessarily thinking about, oh, how do I want to use all the angles that I filmed? Like what guided me more than anything else were the performances, because this is a conversation. This is an actor-led scene. And I think every scene in a way is an actor-led scene, of course. And you always have to think about performance. And in some ways, it's always the most important thing, but especially for a scene that is a conversation. These two scenes are conversations, right? I wanted, literally when I'm choosing, the way that I'm going to cut the film, more than anything else, it's guided by what is the best take, what is the best performance from the actor. Even if that compromises other things, even if that means, oh, I didn't really get to use another angle that I thought turned out well, or whatever it is, even if that means that the edit is a little bit less diverse because of that, the shot selection is a little bit less diverse. I'd rather compromise all of that so that I can preserve the best performance of the actors. And so what does it look like to figure out what that best performance is? And this is a process that comes from making mistakes on earlier films and figuring out like, well, how can I best organize it so that I can make the best decision? And for a film like this, for a conversation, what I'm doing is I'm organizing it by line. I'm basically taking, all right, here's every version of a single line, and I'm organizing the timeline so that every version of the line is all together, and I can watch it back to back to back in sequence of, oh, here's every single take for every version of that line, and I can listen to it back to back, and then make a decision about what's the best performance, what best tells the story I'm trying to tell, and that's guiding the take that I use. Um, and the way I film too is, I mean, different takes were filmed different ways. There were some takes where we were running the whole scene, and then there were some scenes where I was directing it line by line just to make sure that I could get the takes that I wanted. And just depending on the scene, depending on the actor, sometimes it makes sense to do it different ways. But here, like, we did it both. There were times where we just ran the scene, and then there were times where we went line by line. And so I think, especially with that in mind, by the necessity of the way we shot it, it had to be organized line by line. Because there are times where you can do a dialogue scene and it'll be like, oh yeah, like we just did full run throughs of the scene. So let me just kind of edit full run throughs on top of each other, right? And maybe just cutting between like these different angles, different takes, different full run through takes. But this was just and to me, like, it makes sense sometimes this way when I really want to get specific about delivery, is to direct line by line, to say like, actually, I want it to be delivered this way. And so with that in mind, it made sense to edit this way, edit line by line. And I think it works. And I think it works to the benefit of the scene. And I think it still flows as if it's all performed together. And I think it helped that like the first takes that we did were rehearsing through the whole scene, so that we established while filming, here is the rhythm for the scene. Here's the way we were delivering lines. Let's go ahead and, create a basis for this so that when we go line by line and I can get more specific about direction, that we already have like an understanding of, here's the pace of the scene. So I think that that's all helpful. Before I keep talking about it though, I think it's time for a short message. So I will talk to all of you again after the break. See you then.
If you want to be able to support me as a creator, there are several ways that you can make possible the creation of everything that I do. Become a Patreon member. I post all kinds of exclusive content that you can only see first on Patreon. Stuff like behind-the-scenes content for my filmmaking projects, whether that's in-progress scripts, storyboards, rough cuts, anything for my newest films that aren't posted anywhere else besides Patreon. So become a member. There's a whole range of prices, and you can support me even in small ways. That's super meaningful. Supporting me on Patreon too gets you in the credits list of any film that I release while you're a member. And like I said, even a little goes a long way. You can also collaborate with me now through Fiverr. I offer a range of services that could help bring your project to life. And if you've heard any music in the background of this video, that was my music. So feel free to look me up on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen to music. Type in Joe Kendrick. That's JoeKendrick. Look up Joe Kendrick on Spotify.
But yeah, I mean, I think that process, like, and it takes time to organize your timeline, to go through all the shots you do and to reorganize it based on line so that you can compare every version of that line. That is a process that takes time just to organize things, and like I spent a long time doing that before even assembling the scene. And sometimes like it's like you don't want to spend an hour organizing. You want to jump right into just assembling the scene. But I think it's worth it to have a little patience so that you can make sure that your editing decisions are informed. To me, if there's qualities that make a good piece of filmmaking, or especially like high quality creative decisions, it comes from informed decisions, making sure that like I know that this take is in the film because it is the best take, right? Like that's part of a quality edit. And like that should be intuitive and that should be a given. But like it's a process of getting there. It's a process of figuring out, how do I even identify what the best take is? And is that going to be informed by cinematography, by pacing, by what? And to me, I think, especially for these scenes, it made sense to just let it be informed by the acting. Choose the best performance. Go line by line. Figure out the best performance. That's the process for these scenes. And I think it's nice that, like, from the work that I did with the script, from the work I did figuring out the dialogue, from casting, from preparing for the film, from the location, there's so many other things that come with that like I don't have to think about all of the film in that editing process because there's other things that are baked into the footage, right? The dialogue is already written. I don't have to think about what I'm communicating. There are times when you're editing where you do have to really think about the story you're telling and what's important. But just for a conversation here, it's like the dialogue's already written. I don't have to think about what we're saying, right? When I'm writing the script, I have to think about things completely differently. So it was kind of nice just to have a process where it's like I don't have the burden of everything that the film is about for this rough assembly. And I don't know, maybe that's holding it back. I don't know. But I think sometimes just different scenes are edited differently. And I think that that's a lesson within itself. But anyway, all right, I'm just kind of rambling now. I think it's time to wrap up the video. I can show you the rough assembly again just for reference, but with all that in mind, I just kind of wanted to talk about how I go about editing a scene, especially a conversation like this, and especially comparing it, like I said, to I did a timeline breakdown of my short film Benched that I released in December. So I think it could be worth comparing this video to that video, just kind of get a glimpse on how I edit different films differently. And so I recommend watching that. That is on the channel, so go to my channel page to check out that video. So, but without further ado, thank you all so much for watching. Let's watch that rough cut one more time.
Action.
I don't understand. Why don't you want me to do any new music on Sunday?
Well, most of the congregation's my father's age, Trinity. And when he preaches, he speaks their language. I think the music should be spoken in their language, too.
But traditions breed complacency, Jethro. The Spirit of God is alive and well, and sometimes He demands we leave behind our routines.
These old hymns aren't routines to be broken. They're authentic modes of worship. Now, for these old people to try and sing along to your newest songs, I just don't think they could sing it with the same honesty that they'd have otherwise. Look, we'll settle this debate tomorrow, all right? I'll send you a song list by then.
Hey, I just wanted to let you know that the church board is still comfortable with you speaking. Is that something you're still interested in?
Oh, I'd be happy to. I think I have a lot more to say now.
Where do the words come from?
I believe they come from God, but Trinity, do you believe that God might allow the spirits of the departed to sometimes return to this earth?
No, I think He may allow His messages to be delivered by angels and dreams in forms that we recognize, forms that we're comfortable with, but never would He allow His children to be separated from Him once they're in heaven.
I think you're right. But what if I have actually seen a ghost?
Demons can take the form of loved ones too, Jethro.